Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Living Beyond Limits. You all know I'm Reverend Jennifer Spear, and we are a part of Centers for Spiritual Living. For those of you joining us online, welcome also to our Sunday morning service. And so let's begin the service by reading our mission statement that's on the front of your bulletin. We are a sanctuary where people can discover and reveal the presence of God within their own being and experience their oneness with all life. Through the realization of this inner presence of love and peace, we give way to the evolutionary impulse of the divine and become a beneficial presence in the world. So that's what we're doing here at Living Beyond Limits, is we are awakening to the truth of our own divine nature. The truth that, yes, indeed, we are each and every single one of us incarnations of that one creative life principle that we call spirit, God, the infinite, the universe, whatever name you call it, Christ consciousness, Buddha mind. It's all the same thing, that we are all emanations of that one here in form. And what happens is, as we begin to really understand that and feel that and have a sense of our own spiritual nature, we automatically become a beneficial presence. We automatically become more loving and more gentle and more kind and more generous. We automatically find a center of peace within ourselves, so that when the world is crazy out there and chaotic, we can actually move into that center within us that speaks the words all the time that all is well. Because in our spiritual nature, in that place, all is well, regardless of what's happening in the outer world. That's how we find our peace. And so I thank each one of you for walking this path, for bringing your light and your love into this world in a way that is beneficial to each person you come in contact with. And because we are connected to everyone and everything, it is actually beneficial to the whole. So thank you all for that. Well, happy belated 4th of July, everybody. You know, I think the 4th of July is so much more of a celebration than just celebrating our country's independence from British rule. I think really we celebrate the 4th of July because that principle of freedom is so important to us. You might have noticed yourself standing up for other people's freedoms that you don't even know, because freedom has become so important to us. I think that the freedom to choose is one of those things we celebrate. We love that we have the freedom to choose what we do for work. We have the choice of where it is that we want to live, how many children we're going to have, or if we're going to have children at all. We celebrate the freedom to marry or to not marry, and to marry who it is that we want to marry. We celebrate and love that we have the freedom to choose whatever religious expression and experience we want to participate in, what clothes we can wear or not, and the list goes on and on and on. Those are some of those things I think that we are so grateful for, and I think that's really kind of the crux of the 4th of July, is celebrating our freedoms as America. I think as spiritual beings and just as human beings, we also want to be free from want. We want to be free from fear, from hatred, from littleness. And I think walking this particular spiritual path and doing spiritual practice eliminates us and lifts us out of those fears. Fears of want and lack takes us to a freedom from those things. Freedom from the fear of want and hatred and littleness. Do you experience that in your life, that it's moved you down that pendulum swinging to not be as much of that as you used to be before this spiritual path? That's one of the benefits of walking this path. Because what happens as walking this path is we discover our own center. We discover that place within us that is not knocked around by the world. We discover that we are actually part of the one, part of that eternal thing itself, part of the whole. That means if we are part of that, then we are always connected to Spirit, and that we are always connected to everyone and everything all of the time if we are part of the one and part of the whole. We also discover within ourselves an inner peace that's in that place that doesn't get knocked around. We discover a love within ourselves that is without conditions, and we discover our own innate wholeness. The wholeness that does not change by what happens or does not happen in our lives. Rochelle Goodrich says, freedom is the atmosphere in which humanity thrives. Breathe it in. Freedom, that's where we thrive as human beings. And so what if then this celebration of the 4th of July actually included also the freedom to be our authentic selves? The freedom just to show up as exactly who we are without apology and just to be that in the world. What if that freedom included not having to pretend to be something different than you are, not having to pretend to be something more or something less or something different, but just to be fully yourself in the moment? If you don't know, Ray Bunch's memorial service was yesterday. And Ray Bunch was such a loving, big-hearted man. He lived with such spiritual conviction and had this spiritual awareness that you could feel when you were around him. You could kind of lean into it if you were having a hard time because he was grounded in that. Not just grounded in his body, but grounded in that spiritual awareness. And one of the biggest gifts, and I've mentioned this before, that I think we at Living Beyond Limits received from Ray was his authenticity. His willingness to show up as exactly who he was and to be that in front of everybody. There were times when he would come up on this platform and he would drop in and give the most beautiful evocation. You could feel it. We could just move into that place within him and lean into it and feel that truth. And then after that, he would do a reading, and sometimes he would stumble not during that reading, or he might get lost where he was reading, and he would get flustered. And then once he got flustered, he would sometimes have to stop and take a minute to get back inside of his body and to recover so he could continue on with his reading. And that happened because he got triggered, because one of his triggers was about not being able to read well. And us sitting in the audience, you might have felt uncomfortable for him sometimes. You might have been a little bit nervous for him sometimes and wanting him to figure it out, so you didn't have to be uncomfortable with it. But the truth is, every single one of us loved Ray Bunch even more because he was so authentic and so vulnerable with us and so real. He was so authentic. He was just Ray showing up. So what I have discovered for all of us and for myself is the degree that we are willing to show up authentically and allow people to see who we are is the same exact degree that we can feel loved. The same exact degree. You cannot feel any more loved than what you allow people to see who you are. And I know that sometimes we go places, and I don't know that it happens so much here. Maybe it does. You'll have to answer that for yourself. But out of our fear of not being accepted, sometimes we only show people parts of ourselves. Sometimes maybe we show them the facade of what we think that they are going to think is acceptable or is okay, and that's the only part that we show. That means then we're pretending to be something we aren't and not showing up authentically. Reverend Scott Aubrey said, "Imperfection is not a sign of the absence of God. It is evidence of an ongoing, unfolding life which includes both perfection and imperfection." I'm going to say that again just because some mic was making a lot of noise. It might be mine, I'm not sure. Imperfection is not a sign of the absence of God. It is evidence of an ongoing, unfolding life, which includes both perfection and imperfection. So what if it's not about being perfect? What if it's only about loving and being loved? What if that's what this game called life is really about, and it has nothing to do with being perfect? In order to experience our own wholeness, in order to experience our own enoughness, in order to experience our loveability, we have to be willing to take our masks off and show people who we really are. We have to be willing to show them our authentic selves. When we disown parts of ourselves, whether it's just to ourselves or whether it's around other people, we cannot experience our wholeness, because our wholeness includes all of the parts of ourselves, not just the parts we like, not just the parts we think are acceptable. Our wholeness, who we are as whole beings, includes all of those pieces. And if we aren't willing to show people who we are, that means there has to be some little idea that says in your head, if they really knew who I was, they wouldn't like me. If they really knew what was in here, they wouldn't love me. If we're not willing to show up, we have to hold on to that, because we're not proving to ourselves that it's not true. When we are willing to show up authentically, it is then that we realize that we are truly lovable with our foibles, in the midst of our foibles, and not. Ernest Holmes tells us, one of the primary principles of the science of mind is that we are spiritual beings that have been made in the image and likeness of the thing itself. Spirit made us out of itself. Our very life is the life of God, and it is perfect, whole, and complete. There was nothing lacking within us when God created us and declared all creation good. There was nothing lacking when we arrived on this physical plane as newborns, and there is nothing lacking now. There's nothing lacking within you. And yet, we compare and contrast ourselves to the facade that other people show, and then we compare our wholeness to that facade that they're showing us, and then we think we have to do more, we think we have to be more. We can't just be as we are. And so I read a story this week that I thought was a great example of that. It says in Scotland, after having dug to a depth of 1,000 meters last year, Scottish scientists found traces of copper wire dating back 1,000 years and came to the conclusion that their ancestors already had some kind of communication network more than 1,000 years ago. Not to be outdone by the Scots, a few months later, English scientists dug to a depth of 2,000 meters, and shortly thereafter, headlines in the UK newspapers read, English archaeologists have found traces of copper wire and have concluded that their ancestors had advanced high-tech communication network 1,000 years earlier than the Scots. A week later, American newspapers reported the following. After digging to a depth of 5,000 meters in New York, American scientists found absolutely nothing. They surmised, therefore, in this country 5,000 years ago, inhabitants were using wireless technology. Richard Rohr said, "We are not all weeds, but we are not all wheat either. We have to learn even now to accept and forgive this mixed bag of reality in ourselves and in everyone else. I'm going to say it again. We are not all weeds, and we are not all wheat either. We have to learn even now to accept and forgive this mixed bag of reality in ourselves and in everyone else. So what if we accepted ourselves and we accepted other people? What if we realized that we all deserve to be loved? What if we realized that none of us are perfect and that that's okay? What if we took Ray Bunch as an example to know that we are enough and that we are lovable with all of our goodness and all of our shortcomings and all of our foibles? What if we had compassion for ourselves and for others? The second thing that Ray Bunch did was he also took personal responsibility for his experience and for his actions. He owned up to things. I know we all heard Ray say, you know, if I go to the mall and see a bunch of beautiful people, or if I go to the mall and see a bunch of ugly people, I know exactly what's going on inside of me. He took responsibility for his experience, and then when he messed up, he would take responsibility for that also and apologize for it and make it right. He owned up to things. And then he didn't stay stuck in it and tell himself how terrible he was. Then he moved forward. You learn and you grow from your mistakes. So it takes that second part in order to be authentic, in order to show up as the fullness of who you are. It takes also taking responsibility for your experience and for your actions. So one time Ray came up after service to me and said, your mic's in the wrong place. And he grabbed his big old bulky hands in his gruff way and he just bent my mic so that it was like this part of my mic. And I got really, really mad at him because a sound tech that we had had prior to that bent my mic trying to fix it and snapped it in two, and just this piece with the wire cost $800 to replace. I was so mad at him for doing that. And then afterwards, and we're telling a story about Ray Bunch right now, and then afterwards, we went somewhere. There was some function that we went to afterwards, and when I went to leave, he says, oh, I want to walk you out to your car. And I said, okay. And so we're walking down the street, and he's holding my hand, and he says, you know, I wanted to apologize for doing that. And I also wanted to tell you that I would never purposely do something to hurt you or to make you angry. Wow, of course he wouldn't do something purposely to make me angry or hurt me. It brought me right back to my center and to my love, and there was no anger, and there was no judgment, and there was nothing else around that then. That's funny. I'm not sure why this thing's popping. So when we take responsibility for our experience, for what we say and what we do, and we own that, we discover our own wholeness in the midst of whatever we've done. We discover our own goodness that is innate to our beingness, even in the midst of the foibles. We discover that we are still lovable even when we make mistakes. Pema Chodron said, the most fundamental harm we can do to ourselves is to remain ignorant by not having the courage and the respect to look at ourselves honestly and gently. It takes courage, and it takes honesty, and it takes integrity, and it takes mindfulness. And that is how we grow. So also in the midst of that, we need to also recognize what is ours and what is the other person's in the situation. Because when we get our buttons pushed, they're our buttons. Does anyone here ever get their buttons pushed? One of my buttons is actually about being accused of something that I didn't do. I get so mad, but my responsibility and your responsibility is to separate out what is my button and what happened that is just an experience that just happened. Because you didn't install the button, you only pushed the button. The button is mine, and that means it's mine to heal. But the first thing we do is separate out. If I'm having a reaction that is bigger than what the situation called for, the chances are I am having a button that's pushed. I have to discover what that button is. I know where that button of mine came from in my childhood, a traumatic experience. I know it. To tell myself, this is not that. So I can separate the two. So we have to take responsibility for our part in a situation and let the other person take responsibility for their part. But we have to own our part, and we have to make it right, and we have to apologize when that's what's called for. So our responsibility is to apologize, to make amends, and to forgive ourselves, and to forgive the other person. And then to learn from that mistake and do better the next time. So what is ours to do is to have self-compassion. To have compassion for ourselves. None of us are perfect. Ours is to know that we are growing, evolving human beings. That we make mistakes, and that's how we learn and grow. And so here's your recap of the talk. In order to experience your own wholeness, in order to truly feel loved by other people, we must show up as our authentic selves. That's how you know you're really loved. And when we take the second thing is that when we take responsibility for our actions, for our inner experience, and have compassion for ourselves, then we are safe in ourselves. And if we're safe in ourselves, then we're safe to do anything out there. If we're not beating ourselves up and giving ourselves a hard time, if we're safe in here and love ourselves and have compassion for ourselves, then we can go out and do anything. So when we show up and are safe in ourselves, we can show up and be authentic. We can be vulnerable with other people. We can really feel loved and really be loved. And so my invitation to you this week is to have compassion for yourself. Risk being authentic and showing people who you really are. Be vulnerable. Allow people to see you. Be authentic with other people. And when you make mistakes, take personal responsibility for your part in it. Apologize, do what you need to do. And when you're feeling unsettled inside yourself and you're stirred up, to look at the part that you are playing in the drama of what happened and heal what needs to be healed inside of yourself. Because that is calling you to heal it. It's calling to be healed. And if you can't figure out what your button is, you can't figure it out, talk to a trusted friend and tell them what it's like. Look at, what does this feel like from my childhood? What does this feel just like? Oh my gosh, it feels like when my mom used to do da-da-da-da-da. That's the button. But if you can't figure it out, talk to someone that can help you. Talk to a practitioner. Talk to me. We're here to help you grow and to help you discover your wholeness and to help you live from that wholeness. As a result of that, you'll be experiencing your own wholeness. You'll be experiencing peace to a greater degree within yourself and truly feel loved. And so I'm going to close today with a quote from L.R. Nost. He says, "Namaste means that my soul acknowledges yours. Not just your light and your wisdom and your goodness, but also your darkness and your suffering and your imperfections. It is a recognition and acceptance of the inexplicable divine absurdity, the miraculous woven into the ordinary, light and darkness intimately entwined in a magical, messy humanity. It means that I honor all that you are with all that I am." So namaste, my fellow travelers. And I'm going to read it again to you. Namaste means that my soul acknowledges yours. Not just your light and your wisdom and your goodness, but also your darkness and your suffering and your imperfections. It is a recognition of the it is a recognition and acceptance of the inexplicable divine absurdity, the miraculous woven into the ordinary, the light and the darkness intimately entwined in a magical, messy humanity. It means that I honor all of you with all that I am. And so I invite you right now to stand up and to say namaste from that perspective to the people around you. And so namaste to each and every single one of you here. Blessings to you on this path of remembering who you are and bringing that beauty into this world. Blessings to you. You know, really, I think that is what spiritual community is. I think it is seeing each other's light when we can't see it ourselves. And it is knowing that we aren't perfect and loving each other and holding each other in the light and holding each other's best possibility for them and loving them in the midst of all of it. That's really, I think, what this community is about. And so I am overflowing with joy that you are a part of this community. And so I invite you to join me as we turn our attention to the capital T truth. Recognizing that, yes, indeed, God is truly all that there is, because it is this one infinite presence and power, this light and love and wisdom and creative intelligence and goodness that is the source of everything. It is that infinite one that is unfolding itself in and through and around everything that is in existence. And I know that the fullness of the presence of the divine, that absolute, eternal freedom and goodness and magnificence is always right where we are. For it is our own divine essence. It is what we have come from, and it is what we have come here as. We are here as emanations of that beauty and magnificence. Here bringing our heart and our mind and our soul into this world in a way that is magical, in a way that brings healing, that speaks the truth of wholeness, that brings love and compassion and tenderness and foibles and mistakes. And it is all this presence of the divine unfolding. And so I know that each and every single one of us, every single day, are realizing more and more of who we truly are. That limited potential. And that today we open ourselves to give way to that into this world in a way that is healing and in a way that is beneficial to ourselves, to our relationships, to our homes, to our places of business, to our neighborhoods, to our city, to our country. We say yes to the call of our own spirit to be that presence in this world and to be a beneficial presence to this world. And so I speak this word not just about us, but I speak this word about every person on this planet, knowing right where they are is the fullness of that infinite one, that eternal goodness. And that not just is it around them, but it is within every single person. And so today, there is a new light in this world as we each give way to that presence. For it is stirring in the hearts of every human being. It is calling within our hearts to be that light. And we hear that call, and we step up, and we step forward. And that light is all around us. And I speak this word about every single politician, decision maker, or world leader, knowing that the same intelligence, that infinite intelligence, is active within their minds right this moment. That the heart and the love of the divine fills their hearts. That in that intelligence and in that love, they are motivated to do that which serves the highest and the best. For this has always been, and it is active now. And so it is with gratitude that I release this prayer into the creative law of the universe, knowing that it is unfolding itself all around us. And so today we witness that, we acknowledge that, we open ourselves to that, and we celebrate that. And so I release this prayer in gratitude, and I say, and so it is. So I do have some invitations for you. One is this coming Saturday, Chris Braunschweiger, Carol Borwick, and me are hosting a Hawaiian luau that is going to take place at Chris Braunschweiger's house. It is Chris and Peggy's house, I'm sorry. Peggy's probably co-hosting it also, actually. It's going to be this coming Saturday at 6 p.m. It is a fundraiser. There's going to be dinner and drinks, and Hawaiian dancers are going to come and do dancing for us and teach us how to do the hula. Ticket price is $40. Today is the last day to sign up. We would love for you to come. We don't have as many people signed up as we thought we would, so we'll see what happens in the next couple days. But if you are planning to come and you have not yet signed up, please sign up while you are here today. We're going to do a book study and workshop on the book, The Four Agreements. We did it a long time ago, and people have requested to do it again. It's such a powerful book, easy to read, simple. It's going to be a 5-week book study and workshop that is going to start August 6th. It's going to be Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. There's a sign-up sheet in the back. We would love to have you. It's lots of fun. We read it and we get into groups and talk about how the things apply to our lives, and we'd love to have you join us. Pat and Mike Winterer are still working with the people that are unhoused in Long Beach. If you would like to participate in doing outreach with them, talk with them today. They are here. We have prayer support after service. The practitioners are happy to sit down and pray with you. Sunday talks are available on our YouTube channel. At this moment in time, they are not being posted to our website. So you can go to our YouTube channel, and everything is listed by date there, all the talks when they come out. And we ask you to check in on Meetup and say, I'm going. I think you can do it for like 6 weeks ahead of time. To follow us on Facebook, to share the things that come out on Facebook, to like them, and Instagram, and we are posting some things on Instagram, and to like those and share those with your friends also. That's how we build an audience. And so I invite you to repeat after me. Good fills my life now. I recognize it. I own it. I savor it. I celebrate it. And so it is.